Hello, my dear friends. Welcome back. Come in. Sit down for a moment. I'm glad you're here. Today I want to share a story with you. Not a comfortable one. I'll warn you of that. But an important one. A deeply human one. It is a story about 8 people who were thrown away by a war, and what they chose to do with the life that remained. Sometime in the 1950s, a Korean man walked into a Japanese embassy with a request that left the staff speechless. He said quietly, seriously, that he needed help finding his Japanese wives. Not his Japanese wife. His Japanese wives. 7 of them. The room went very still. But as this man began to speak, as he told them where he had been and what had happened, something changed. Because this was not gossip. This was not something strange or scandalous. This was a wound that a war had left on 8 ordinary people who never asked to be part of any of it. Let me take you back to the beginning. December 7th, 1941. Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, and the United States entered the Second World War. In the Pacific, American forces pushed hard and fast. Rather than attack every Japanese-held island, they surrounded them, cutting off supply lines, leaving garrisons to collapse on their own. One of those bypassed islands held about 600 Japanese soldiers. Among them were people who had no choice about being there. Korean people, forcibly conscripted as laborers. These were not volunteers. They were taken, coerced, used. When the Japanese command finally evacuated under cover of darkness, no one stopped to count. No one looked back. 8 people were left behind. A 21-year-old Korean man named Kim Woo-gil and 7 Japanese women. Imagine that morning. The sun coming up over the water. No ship on the horizon. No radio. No way to reach anyone. Just 8 people understanding slowly, terribly, that the world had forgotten them. Kim had been taken from his home in 1942 and set to work for a war he had no part in starting. The 7 women had their own stories, their own families, somewhere far away. They too had been taken. Now all of them were here, together, alone. They ate what the soldiers had left behind. Canned food, a little rice. It ran out fast. Kim went into the sea before sunrise, with whatever broken tools he could find. He built rough shelters from driftwood, imperfect, but enough to keep the rain off. The Japanese women gathered firewood, searched the jungle for fruit and roots. Nobody gave up. Nobody could afford to. At first, they could barely speak to each other. Kim in Korean, the women in Japanese. But when survival depends on understanding, you find a way. Hands, eyes. A look that says, I see you. I am not going to let you disappear. One afternoon, Kim found an old Japanese storage building in the island's interior. Inside, canned goods and rice. He thought of the fields back home, of farmers he had watched as a boy, and he made a decision. They could not depend on what others had left behind. They had to grow something of their own. Together they cleared a flat piece of land, planted the rice, watered it by hand. They watched over those tiny green shoots, like the most precious things in the world, because they were. That first harvest came, and something shifted between them, deeper than relief, a sense that they belonged to each other now. What came next is not easy to describe simply. Please hold it gently. The women, after speaking among themselves, made a collective decision. They chose to accept Kim as a shared husband, not from romance, but from trust built one small act at a time. From the fact that he had shown up for them every single morning, without being asked. Kim accepted this with great seriousness. He made a promise to himself and to them. He would treat every one of them equally, no favoritism. The household would be built on fairness and shared decision-making. My friends, I'd like you to pause here for a moment. What if things had gone differently? What if Kim had insisted only one woman could be his wife? What if the women had turned their pain into jealousy, competing for his attention? And here is the most uncomfortable question. These were ordinary people, thrown together by cruelty. Not all of them would have been, by the world's shallow standards, considered beautiful. What if Kim had quietly favored the ones he found more attractive, giving them better food, more warmth? I think we all know the answer. They would not have survived. A group divided by jealousy consumes itself from within, long before hunger or weather has a chance to finish the job. What saved these 8 people was not luck. It was a conscious choice to set aside rules that no longer fit and build new ones that did. When circumstances become truly extraordinary, the thinking that works in ordinary life may not be enough. And isn't that something we can carry with us? The colleague whose working style drives you a little mad. The friend who is not easy to love on difficult days. We too are asked, sometimes, to choose harmony over pride, to choose the group over the self. 8 years passed. 8 years of planting, fishing, building. 8 years of children being born. 27 of them who grew up knowing only the sea, the jungle, each other's voices. 8 people had become 35. In 1953, an American naval patrol vessel passed by chance near the island. A sailor spotted smoke rising through the trees. They went ashore to investigate. 35 people, alive. Children who had never seen a car or walked into a school. People abandoned by a war who had simply stubbornly, beautifully refused to disappear. But the rules of the time were what they were. Kim was sent back to Korea. The women and children were sent to Japan. 8 years of choosing each other, every single day. And then, in hours, it was over. The farewell was heartbreaking. Kim eventually made his way to Japan to find them, but life had moved on. 5 of the 7 women had remarried. They had arrived with children and no safety net, and made the choices survival required. 2 remained. 2 who said yes. I will begin again with you. He carried all of them with him, always. When he died, his ashes were divided into 3 portions. 1 to Korea, 1 to Japan, near the wives and children he had lost, and the 3rd, back to the island where he had fished before sunrise, and where 27 lives had begun. That island had been a kind of hell, but it had also been the only place where all of them had truly belonged to each other. My dear friends, this story is often told as something sensational, but when you sit with it, really sit with it, you find 8 ordinary people who had every reason to give up, and instead chose, one small act at a time, to take care of each other. Kim Woo-gil fished in the dark so that 7 women would not go hungry. That is not strange. That is one of the most human things I have ever heard. They all mattered. Every single one of them. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. Until next time, take care of each other. That's all any of us can do. Good night.